They say the sea gives and the sea takes, but that Saturday, it gave me the kind of revenge money can't buy. It started like any normal weekend. The tide was low, the sun had just cleared the tops of the mangroves, and I'd pulled in early from checking crab traps just past the cove. I backed my boat up the ramp and parked it the way I had for the past 15 years. Nothing out of the ordinary, except for the glint of sunlight bouncing off something new near the edge of the lot. Pink flamingos. Not the real ones, the tacky plastic kind. 6 of them lined up like they were on patrol. Right beside them stood a glossy easel sign with curling script that read, "Welcome aboard, the shoreline soiree hosted by Mallory." I knew right then, Mallory had decided to turn my private boat ramp into her personal red carpet. And I knew I wasn't going to let that slide. Mallory'd only lived in the neighborhood 3 months. Showed up with a high-gloss smile and the kind of confidence you only get from selling luxury homes to people who never use their kitchens. Within a week, she'd slid herself into the HOA meetings, and within a month, she was running them. Her big mission? Rebranding our quiet, lived-in coastal town into something out of a vacation brochure. She printed glossy pamphlets, passed them around, called our boat trailers visual pollution, said she was here to elevate the shoreline experience. But this was beyond pamphlets. She dropped off an envelope on my porch 2 days earlier, sealed with a fake gold sticker that said, "Official HOA Correspondence." Inside was a printed letter informing me that my boat ramp was temporarily reserved for the HOA's annual yacht and shoreline gala. Except there was no such thing. She made it up. I knew because I'd served on the board myself years back. I still had friends there. No one had approved it. Still, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I walked over that afternoon, thinking maybe this was all just a misunderstanding. But the moment she opened the door wearing a silk scarf, sunglasses, and a headset, I knew I was walking into a different kind of storm. "Oh, the boat access thing," she said, like she was swatting away a mosquito. "Yeah, we've got that reserved. Saturday's gonna be stunning the press, might even show up. I know you fish and whatever, but could you use a different part of the bay? Just for one night." I told her the ramp was private. Deeded. Built it myself with my brother back in the day. She patted my shoulder and said, "You can still come, we'll have oysters." I left without arguing. Not because she was right, but because I knew fighting ego with ego just makes a mess. And I had a better plan. Turns out, Mallory had sent out a fake email thread claiming I'd given her permission. Even told the HOA president, Beth, that I was excited to be part of something elegant for once. Elegant, huh? That was the moment I stopped being neighborly. That was when I got calculating. See, I've been around this bay longer than most of these waterfront dreamers. And I know a few things about tides, about permits, and about what happens when you disrespect a man's property. So I called in a few favors. Guys like Hank and Jade, real seamen, the type who can gut a fish with one hand and steer through a storm with the other. We met under the pier, passed around a six-pack, and made a plan. By Friday morning, Mallory's crew had already roped off the ramp with velvet stanchions and tiki torches. Someone was plugging into the outlet behind my bait shed. I shut it off. Another was anchoring inflatable docks into the inlet. I took pictures. Someone had even hung a sign from one of the old cedar posts I'd driven into the ground years ago with my Brothera handwritten thing that read, "Private event, do not enter." That's when it got personal. I didn't yell. I didn't make threats. I just documented everything and waited. Saturday rolled in like a drumbeat. By noon, guests were arriving, eels clicking on cracked pavement, linen suits brushing against rusted crab cages. There was a floating DJ booth blasting music like it was a Miami club. One guy tried parking a jet ski in my oyster bed. A woman took selfies in front of a crab trap with a Yacht Life sign duct taped to it. Mallory strutted around in a white jumpsuit and gold sandals, barking orders through a megaphone like she was the admiral of a doomed cruise ship. And as the sun climbed, so did the tide. The floating docks weren't made for real water. They were lake rentals, built for flat surfaces and wedding photos. But no one told Mallory that. Or if they did, she didn't care. By mid-afternoon, things started falling apart. A gust of wind tipped the seafood tower. A guest slipped on shrimp cocktail sauce and took out a folding chair. The generator blew, sending sparks into the air and cutting the music. Someone screamed. A decorative canoe floated away with 2 kids in it, paddling using champagne buckets. Then came the calls for help. Mallory ran to my property line, heels sinking in the wet grass, and shouted, "You need to get your boat. People are floating away." I stayed seated on my porch, coffee in hand. calm as the tide. That's not my party, I said. That's not my dock. That's not my problem. Her face went red, then white. Her jaw trembled like she'd swallowed a jellyfish. That's when my phone buzzed. It was Hank. We're in position. You want to do this? I nodded. Within minutes, his trawler came around the bend, flanked by JD's boat and Mark's old dredging skiff. They were dragging a custom rig-oversized crab nets, looped with PVC and nylon, built to haul in everything from tangled buoys to fallen docks. We lined up alongside the floating wreck Mallory called a gala. One by one, we lowered the nets not for fish, but for guests. First came a woman in a sequin dress, heels in hand, shrieking as she was hoisted out like the catch of the day. Next came a groomsman holding a deflated flamingo. People clung to centerpieces and tried to save cheese platters. Mallory screamed at the Coast Guard, screamed at me, screamed at the wind. But the sea didn't care. The sea just rose. Eventually, she got in the net herself, arms folded, hair dripping, mascara streaked like war paint. And just like that, her floating kingdom collapsed. By the next morning, Mallory had filed 2 letters, one with the HOA, one with a downtown law firm. Accused me of sabotage, of humiliation. Said I'd endangered her guests and ruined her social standing. I showed the zoning officer my original permits, video footage, and property lines. He laughed and closed the case. When she posted online, trying to spin it as a misunderstood celebration, the comments lit her up like a bonfire. Neighbors posted videos. One even uploaded a meme of her being netted, with the caption, "Caught in the act." It was brutal, but she still had one act left in her. 2 weeks later, she hosted a reflection gathering, a last-ditch attempt to rewrite the story. Said she was stepping down from event planning duties to give others a chance. Said the boat ramp was a symbol of community unity. Showed a photo of my ramp and called it shared space. That's when I finally spoke up. I stepped forward and said, loud and clear, the ramp isn't shared. It's mine. It always has been. Built it with my own hands, on my own land, with my brother. You hijacked it, lied about permission, and turned it into a hazard. And if you really want unity, the first step is telling the truth. Silence. Then murmurs. Then a neighbor spoke up. He's right. We saw it all. Another said, that party nearly drowned my nephew. Mallory mumbled something, retreated to the snack table, and the illusion shattered. A week later, a moving truck showed up at her place. By Friday, she was gone. No goodbyes. No announcements. The house sold quietly to a retired couple from out of state. Nice folks. Brought pie to the HOA meeting. Asked about the best place for crab rolls. Waved when they passed. The bay, once again, was quiet. But every now and then, someone brings up the fishing net story. Some laugh. Some shake their heads in disbelief. A few kids even acted out like it's a legend. I don't tell it much anymore. Not because I'm tired of it, but because the bay doesn't care for drama. It just wants respect. And after everything that happened, I got mine back not through yelling or threats, but by holding the line. By letting the tide do what it always does, rise and reveal. So what do you think? Was I right to let it all unfold the way it did? Or should I have taken legal action from the jump? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your take. What would you have done? And hey, if you've ever had a Mallory in your neighborhood, I think you know exactly how satisfying it is when the tide finally turns.